So you came back here in 2017, and you've been living here since then?
Yeah.
Basically?
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. Like when we first moved out in 2011,
Yeah.
there was a house. That was the whole reason for moving.
Yeah.
From California to northern Minnesota.
That was the entire reason.
There was a house through the family, and it was sitting open.
Oh, I see. Okay. Was it through your family or your wife's? Or?
My wife's
Yeah.
family.
Uh-huh.
And they were looking at it. It was built for my wife's grandparents.
Yeah.
And they were living in Monaga
Yep.
at the assisted living place. And through the family, they were just trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do with the house? And so before we got married, we're in Southern California. Before we got married, we were basically throwing darts on the map, like Texas, Idaho. I grew up in Idaho a little bit, so, down south, all these different places. And then it was like a month before we say I do. And my mother-in-law, soon to be, she's like, well, there's a house in Park Rapids, Minnesota. I'm like, where is that? And they show me this photo album, like, of the week that they'd come out during the summer or whatever. And I'm looking at these photos, and it's like, it was really green. Everything was beautiful. The house looks awesome. And I'm like, well, yeah, we can, let's, why?
Yeah.
Let's just give it a shot. Let's go.
Sure.
And so our honeymoon, we joke about it now, our honeymoon was like a budget moving truck with the car in the back and the streamers and whatever, just married, and 2 dogs sitting in between us. And, we came in like late at night when we finally hit town.
What month was it?
It was in August.
All right.
Yeah. So
okay.
it was still pretty, that was a decent summer you guys had that year. And we had a Rocky's pizza, and we're sitting, on the whatever furniture's in the house. We're sitting there just eating this Rocky's pizza. I wake up the next morning, I look out the bay window. I'm like, what did we just do? This is not where we came from. And
yeah, because like Ventura County is like, heavily populated. It's like, that's sunny California, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, so we went from hundreds of thousands of people and 300 days of sun and places where people travel and, sell everything but a kidney to come find. And now we're, in northern Minnesota.
Yeah.
Which people also, I come to find they're traveling to, just not at this time of the year. Usually.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it is a tourist destination.
Yeah.
But, right. I mean, now, of course, as we sit here, I think it's like probably either below zero or close to it outside. How does a couple of people from Southern California deal with that? Like the first time do you remember like the conversation that you had with your wife when you first got here and it's or that temperature started to get that low? And
yeah. So for her, it was definitely more of a shock. I grew up in southern Idaho.
Yeah.
And so we did get winter there. It wouldn't get nearly as blistering cold as it gets here. There wasn't as much wind.
It's a good way to put it. I like that, blistering
Well,
cold.
when you get blisters on your face, that's what that term's for. And, we ended up, I think the first winter was like super mild. We're like, oh, we can maybe do this.
Not so bad.
Not so bad. It was kind of like last year. I think last year was super mild. And then we came to find very quickly that not all winters are created equal.
Right.
I think it was the next 2 were like, oh my word, there's just snow everywhere, and we don't. And that was actually, so we were here for a couple of years, and it was after that second winter where we're like, are we cut out for this? Like, do we need to be here? Is there somewhere else where we need to be? And so we ended up kind of hopping around just a little bit, and then we finally came back. I said in 2017. And
been here ever since.
Been here since. Added 2 more kids to the mix here. So 3 of our 4 children have been born in St. Joe's.
Okay.
And the other one was born in Boise,
All right.
Idaho. We lived in Boise for a couple of years before coming back here. So
okay.
it's kind of how all that happened.
So one of the things, I think with the weather here, it's not as much as like the cold weather, but it's in the wintertime, it also seems to be gray all the time. Like the skies are usually pretty gray. Of course, today is sunny, but if it's super cold, it's usually sunny. But on average, it's pretty gray. That's got to be a big shock to the system too, from a couple coming from Southern California, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You get some of that out there. Because we were close enough to the coast where you'd get some of that marine fog that would come in and just settle for a little bit,
right?
But it wouldn't stay for, and usually that had more to do with like the grade, whether you're at the top of the grade or the bottom of the grade. If you're at the bottom of the grade, you were definitely affected by that.
That's a Sierra what are the mountains there?
The Santa Monica mountain range.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really it's the mountains that separate like the ocean from the next furthest inland point. So we were just over that first ridge.
Okay. They call it the coastal range, or is that something different?
I don't know what it's called. It's called Beautiful.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it is.
I didn't know at the time.
I love Cal. I mean, I told you before when we were talking the other day that I was born in California, and I feel like California, if as far as natural beauty is concerned, California's got every other state beat.
Yeah, you get where we were, you wouldn't get the 4 distinct seasons. You'd get 2 pretty distinct seasons, hot and not so hot.
Yeah,
but beautiful. And either way. So what gave us a little bit more? So Boise, actually, when we lived there for a couple of years, Boise would get this. It's called inversion. Because you're in the Treasure Valley there. Yep. And so you're nestled between 2 mountains, mountain ranges again, and this fog would come in and it would sit for like 2 months.
A fog.
Whatever it's called, I don't know what it is, but it would just sit.
Yeah. So gray skies.
Gray sky, basically. And you'd see the sun kind of try to come out some days, but there was one year that it was probably a good month and a half where it did not lift. It was every day was gray. So
that can have an effect on your.
It does have an effect here. So, and I've tried here like supplementing with vitamin D and other types of things, but what I've come to find is this is called weathering the storm, and you're going to get through winter, and hopefully you come out better for it. I actually enjoy the winter season now. I used to really like, oh my goodness, we're going to do this again. But you take some adaptation, and we're not from here. We don't try to pretend like we are. So we get advice from the people who've done this for a long time. Like, hey, how do you do this? Well, if you stay inside every day, you're gonna get that cabin fever. You just got to get out and experience what winter has to offer here too, which has been a cool experience for our kids more so also. Yeah.
You can really dress for anything too. But I don't know. I kind of try to live by this general rule of thumb, which is to try to spend at least 1 hour outside every day, regardless of of what the weather is. Yeah. And it's tough some days, but generally speaking, I think if I can do that, I feel better. I mean, just generally, overall, maybe it doesn't really have an impact on my health, but I think maybe just like psychologically or whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if you are out walking, around, or even if you break it up, like 20 minutes here, because I've got a dog too, so of course you got to go out, and helps getting outside having dogs and all that. But okay. Have you always been interested in physical fitness and training and stuff like that? Or when did you first kind of get into, I guess, focusing on that?
Yeah. So short answer, no. Always. Short answer, no. I would say that so when I came from, part of my story, when I came from a lifestyle that included, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into here or not, but...
Go right ahead.
So I came out of a lifestyle of pretty heavy addiction.
Okay.
Drug and alcohol specifically.
Oh.
And that would have been in my teens, late teens, early 20s. And so by the time it was evident a change was necessary. Like, this is not a game anymore. We're dancing with death.
Right.
And when I came out of that, out of that darkness into a marvelous light, into something that I'd never really experienced before, I had like 1.5 people in my life that were kind of into fitness at the time.
Yeah.
And I say half just because I hardly ever saw the other guy. But one I was kind of working with at the time, and he was a personal trainer. And this is back in like the, Fit Body boot camps and beach. There was a beach one too. And he was kind of a trainer at just a local gym. This was a Gold's Gym or a 24-hour fitness or whatever in California. And he said, I'm training these clients of mine, and they're paying me for my services. I hang out with you. Why don't you just come hang out with me at the gym? Yeah. And you just do what I'm having them do.
Yeah.
And see if you like it. And I never looked back after that. What I started to realize very quickly was there were things that I'd never tapped into. So I was a baseball player, but not much on the athletic side when it came to like gym or training specifically for the sport of baseball.
Sure.
You didn't really have to a whole lot. You can kind of just go play more.
It's hot dogs and beers with Babe Ruth, right? They say.
Get your axe in, throw a few baseballs around, you'll be all right. So And I played competitively, in Idaho and California.
Yeah.
And tried to play a little bit after high school as well. But, going to the gym necessarily, anything around a barbell or anything like that, I really did not have any ambition to press into that until I got sober.
Yeah. So when that happened, I mean, I guess, it's such a great thing to be sober and, to not have that as a part of your life weighing you down and all that. Plus, as you mentioned, it's dangerous too. Yeah. It can really lead to some terrible consequences and things like that. But did you ever feel at that point kind of like, kind of panic to say to yourself like, wow, how am I ever going to even have any fun or even enjoy life at all without, indulging in those kind of substances or drinks or whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
And, how did that relate at all, if you felt that way, to kind of transitioning into the healthy lifestyle, physical fitness and all that stuff?
Fantastic question, because I think that that's an area that folks like myself, I had tried to get sober previous to.
Yeah.
But I could never find anyone who was like cool,
who
I wanted to hang out with outside of that. So
yeah.
I was like, man, this is so rough. Like, do you have to like be an addict to be cool? I didn't know any other way, And so what I say is by the grace of God, honestly, these two people in my life. So one of them, so there was a detachment from the original friend, because he wasn't sober, he was just a trainer.
Sure.
But his lifestyle was a little bit more than what I was wanting to continue to dabble with, so to speak.
Right.
So I had a sponsor. I hopped right into the programs, Alcoholics Anonymous, all these
12-step programs.
12-step programs, and I took on a sponsor. He took on me as a sponsee, and it was like he and I were cut from the exact same cloth. He was wild, but he was sober, and he'd been sober for quite some time, and he was younger. He was closer to my age, and he was a gym rat.
Yeah.
And he taught me, not just through the gym, but he taught me, he came from some wealth also, so he has some cool stuff to play with.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to have fun sober.
Yeah.
Had I not had JD as his name, had I not had JD in my life, I honestly don't even know.
Yeah.
I wasn't white knuckling it up to that point, but I didn't meet him until like 6 months into being sober.
Right.
And so that was really the transition from like, okay, we're doing the motions, we're doing the meetings, we're going to this, we're doing that. I'm kind of doing my own fitness thing, but he also he had medically retired out of the Navy, and so he had a fitness background as well. And he just loved to have a ton of fun. So it kind of bid well into not just our growth of
what a great blessing, to have that provided for you. Because I know, part of the 12 steps is that you have to basically say that you're powerless over this, then you have to give it to God, right?
Yep,
and then God provided that.
Yep, he did. And so I took it to the next level. Like he had a house with multiple rooms in it. I kind of needed a place to stay, so he took me in as a roommate as well.
Right.
So we were like integrated, life on life often. And so with that came a different aspect of fitness, and some of that journey continued on in a little bit of a different way, which then set me on a different trajectory and that's where some of these other avenues come into play down the road too. So I look back and I'm like, all these little avenues and turning points and connections and everything, like every single one of them has helped to develop and evolve who I am and where I've been able to see growth, not just physically but holistically in my life. So that hinge point, though, was definitely during those first 6 to 9 months, we'll call it, during my entrance into this new way of living.
Yeah.
And fitness was just there with it.
It was just naturally a part of it.
It was naturally a part of it. I didn't exactly, some folks, and I understand, I could have done this very easily. They'll just trade the drug or the drink for 5 hours in a gym and a barbell.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's always the healthiest transition to make, but if you have to do that for a short time, it is better than what you were doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah,
So,
at that point, you're going to do anything to kind of stay away from the old haunts and the old relationships. And that's also something else that I think is difficult too about becoming sober, which is that you start to realize sort of who your friends are and then who your acquaintances or drinking buddies were and all that, right?
Yep.
And then you start to get some clarity, and you can start to see people for who they really are, rather than just sort of being in that fog of, misery loves company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so getting involved with a new set of friends and a new relationships and everything like that is all just part of the process of getting better, right?
Absolutely.
Recovery, as they call it.
Right. And it was getting into more involved into, so it was a very spiritual experience for me. I won't shade that. I came, it was a Good Friday, my last night out. It was a Good Friday. So I wake up that Saturday morning and I'm just like, what just happened last night? Like I shouldn't even be alive. Like I've got blood all over the back of my hands. I have no recollection of what happened. It was a terrible situation.
Sure.
I look myself in the mirror and I say, "You're done.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
This is not." So I waltz into the only church I know to go to on Sunday morning, which is Easter.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to be like early. I'm going to get a seat in the back. I just want to blend in. I just want to kind of ease back into this life with God. I show up at the last 10 minutes somehow at the last service of the day. So,
wow.
Churches have like 5 services that day. How did I screw this up that bad? So I get in and there is a seat in the back, the only one really. Yeah. And, anyways, the pastor starts talking about, if there's anybody here who wants to make that next step with God and whatever. And he had known my baggage. He'd known my story, my history. He tried to help many times. Yeah. And I know more than sit down, and I'm getting up and I'm walking to the front.
So you came up for the altar call?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I didn't even have a choice at that point. I'm like, this is the only reason why I'm here today. I missed this whole entire boat completely other than this last 10 minutes. This is obviously why I'm supposed to be here today. Yeah. And so I go up there. And so what that birthed was a great moment in my life that I'll never forget. But also with that, there were other men in that community as well who enjoyed mountain biking. And so for the first time in my life, I'm now on a dual suspension mountain bike riding through these hills in my backyard that I'd driven by countless times on the way to whatever I was doing prior to this. And now I'm experiencing going through them on a 2-wheel cycle, almost dying for different reasons. Yeah. You can go too fast. Yeah. But like they took me in also. So like this whole journey, of not just the gym, but the mountain bike and experiencing fresh oxygen at the top of this peak, being able to see the ocean and the snow-crested mountains over there, and all these different moments that I never knew existed. Yeah. Not with any sort of clear perspective. Yeah. So
do you think like when you went up that Easter Sunday, that was kind of like the point in time when you were saved, or do you think you were before, or did it was it kind of like you had to learn more, or kind of what's your take on that?
So the way I say it is salvation and surrender, they have different dates in my book.
Okay. Fair enough. Right.
For me, I'm saying that's not a generalization for everybody, but for me, so I grew up with an understanding of God. We went to Lutheran church. I did the Bible school, vacation Bible school stuff in the summer, and went to summer camp every now and then.
Confirmation,
which at that point, just meant I got to drink the wine with the adults.
Yeah, right.
So I didn't know, the catechism. Okay, I guess we're going to memorize some of this, but I still to this day will remember points of the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed through that. Sure. And that was
you'll never forget
12, 13 years old. So it's like, so those were all formative points in my life. I went to a parochial school for a few years. So there wasn't like I was never agnostic or an atheist. I did some very stupid things, but I believed that my salvation came through faith. Yeah. Before I had the ability to surrender. Okay. To that lifestyle. Yeah. Yeah. And so the patience and the grace of God.
So you trusted Christ before you fully surrendered your
plenty of commitments at the altar as a kid. Like I just I don't want to go to hell. Right. Basically, there's a lot of that stuff that happens too. But then as I grew up into more of a mature way of understanding some of those things, and I haven't arrived anywhere yet, but the maturity came over the years of seeing now it is by grace you've been saved through faith, and those moments happened often when I was young. I remember having some experiences even before my teenage years, before the debauchery entered in and I chose to live this reckless life, where I remembered having very deep moments with God as a kid, and I didn't have a grid for it. My friends weren't talking about this kind of stuff, but I do remember those moments. Yeah. And so it was always like I knew he was there, even in the midst of as crazy as this may sound, like even in the midst of, there's a psalm, you know, David would talk about how I can go to the depths of the depths, and I can go to the furthest of the fars, and I can go to all these other places, and you're there, you know? And so my experience has been like, where can I go that God is not? Now you can choose to not acknowledge, and you can choose to say, you know, I can live however I want to live.
Yeah.
And he's just going to pour some grace on it, and I'll be fine in the end because I said a prayer once and I'll go to heaven.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about
Sure.
at all. I'm saying, though, for me, the salvation surrender piece. So surrender came in the process of continual surrender, continual death, you know, every day, carrying of a cross came that Easter, or that Saturday, I would even say. Waking up that Saturday, and then it was coming to on Sunday. And then that process has been continuing on. So that was April 3rd, 2010, was that Saturday.
Yeah.
April 4th was Easter Sunday.
Wow.
So 2010, so what is that? We're coming up on 15 years now of still trying to figure out what surrender means. You know? So it's a continual process.
Do you believe faith is a gift?
What's that?
You believe faith is a gift of God?
To have faith?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's explicitly communicated through the writings of the Apostle Paul, that there's a spiritual gift of faith.
Right.
I think that nobody comes to the Father. Well, I don't think that's what it says. Nobody comes
to
the Father.
John chapter 6, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's already an internal drawing by the Spirit, which we can't do anything to earn or buy.
And I think that goes on to say no one comes to the Father except that he be drawn.
Yeah.
And I've looked at that before, and the Greek is actually closer to dragged.
That would be my picture. Yes. All right. He's not listening anymore. Back by the ear. Yeah.
So God drags us to the Son.
It's an incredible picture.
It's actually one of my favorite chapters in the Bible is John chapter 6.
Yeah, it's great.
So I don't know. Should we start with what is Stone? Is it Stonebreaker?
Yeah, Stonebreaker Collective.
Stonebreaker Collective.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know that it's based in part on a passage, Isaiah 40 verses 3 through 5.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So before you explain what it is, I just want to read that so that people have an understanding of what we're talking about.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I copied this, and by the way, the official version of this podcast is the King James Version.
Of course it is, yes. Yes.
So it says, "The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low. And the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough places plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. For the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is Isaiah 40 verses 3 through 5.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with the Stonebreaker Collective? And what is the Stonebreaker Collective?
No, that's a great question. I appreciate you asking. So if it's anything like my life, and, you know, there's very few points where linear progression makes a whole lot of sense. If I look back, I'm like, okay, this wasn't linear. This was like one circle over here and one circle over here, and then they kind of collided, and now we've got lines and all these different things. So how it all started was I was driving in a truck, and this would have been close to 5 years ago now, give or take. And I keep hearing this name in my head, in my spirit. I don't know how to describe it. I keep hearing it. Maybe you've had that experience where you just like you wake up one morning and you hear a word, like it's just a recurring word, and you go look the word up, and for whatever reason it means something to you at that point. That's happened to me multiple times. And so I'm hearing this name, and I'm like, Gustav. What is Gustav? Like Gustav. And so I just Google the name Gustav. And what I come to find, like the first thing that pops up, and I've tried this since, and it's not the first thing that pops up anymore, but for whatever reason this day, the first thing that pops up is a painting by Gustave Courbet. And
he's a French painter. Okay, yeah. I think I'm. Is he painting nature scenes?
Realism, nature scenes, a lot of landscapes. Tries to depict people in their raw elements, I think was kind of his deal.
Okay.
So he was almost, from what I understand, kind of shunned by People didn't like how real his paintings were.
Right,
you know?
right. Because wasn't he kind of a contemporary of the Impressionists, or he was sort of maybe that movement came just before the Impressionists?
Yeah. Well, in my understanding, and this is all after the fact too. I'm not by any means a historian when it comes to this individual or painting in general, but I have done a fair amount of legwork trying to just figure out where did this painting come from.
Yeah.
And this painting was entitled Stonebreaker.
Okay.
And so immediately when I look at the painting, I see two people in the painting. One is noticeably older, and one is noticeably younger. So immediately in my mind, I'm looking at this, I'm like, there's multi-generations right there doing the same thing. And what are they doing? Well, if you look at the word Stonebreaker, they are breaking them down in order to, the painting depicts them building a road.
Yeah,
They're preparing a way.
So just describe what the painting looks like.
Yeah, and I don't know if we want to show it to the camera. I have it on my phone, but it's an old. You can't see their faces too much. You know, they're kind of hats brimmed down, and they're rugged clothing. This is pioneer style clothing. Wooden shoes, I think, on the older man, and tattered, frayed clothing, and they're breaking these bigger rocks down into smaller pebbles because from what I understand of the history of the painting, that area they're in is going to soon become a road.
Okay.
And so when I see that part, as I'm looking at the description of the painting, there's two generations, old and young, working together to prepare a way. And immediately I know the John the Baptist talks about this, and well, he's quoting it. Who's he quoting it from? And so he's quoting Isaiah.
Right.
And so I go back and I look and I read the original in a multiple variety of translations, and I see the resounding theme in there is prepare the way. That's the whole entire crux. And you can look at it from the prophetic text into John the Baptist also being a prophet of prophets, what Jesus would call them. And the whole entire painting kind of culminated in that as I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wait a minute here. And I immediately sent it to my good buddy at the time, because we were kind of tracking with some similar things, and we thought we were going to maybe do something fitness related together, like start something together. And then when I sent this to him, well, I'm the old guy in the painting and he's the young guy. He was still in high school at the time. And I had been training as just a strength and conditioning trainer, a coach, with my personal gym, some of the young guns who wanted to play football at the next level or just stay fit or whatever, and it was a bridge for me to just stay connected and help try to raise up some youngsters. And he was one that really latched onto that, and so I chose to share that with him right away. I'm like, dude, check this out. I just saw this word comes to my mind. I just saw this painting. I'm looking at it, and he's like, wow, there's something there. And I kind of just took his childlike faith and my childlike whatever, and we kind of just ran with it. And so over the course of time now, what we've come to see is Stonebreaker Collective is now it's yes, it's a run club. There's a handful of us that are going to run on a Saturday, do a long run or do some local stuff together. We've had small pieces of merchandise that we've printed for ourselves through a local screen printer. And we might rep that when we go out and run a race, just to kind of begin to brand or build a name or whatever.
Sure.
But ultimately at the core, what it is a collection of folks who desire to get into that stone breaking,
preparing the way.
Exactly. And what that could mean is, because part of the challenge has been like, is this an overtly spiritual or an overtly Christian thing that we're trying to build here? Yes and no, because I don't know of any other way to try to connect with people that I want to connect with, but through the avenues of fitness, just the things I do or the things I like, So I'm taking the things I like, and we're taking the things we enjoy. We both happen to enjoy long distance running, or we both happen to enjoy, another buddy of mine is a phenomenal triathlete, and I like to do that too. And I like to run in the mountains, and I kind of like to do it all. I never really pick one discipline. So I've met so many different people in all these different capacities. And so what it led to was literally a year ago, this same friend and I, he tells me, he's like, I want to do something ridiculously challenging, like fitness wise. I just want to do something stupid challenging. I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're heading into winter.
Yeah.
You know, like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about something outside? Because we had been talking about maybe an ultra race or something like that.
Sure.
And so with all of this happening, he's like, I want to do something crazy. And so that's all happening at the same time of us sitting down talking about Isaiah 40. And there's 4:0 involved, and there's 3:4:5 involved, and there's all these different numbers, which are just, they're kind of all coming together now in some sort of vision build. And I'm trying not to jumble this up too much as I tell the story, but this was just a year ago where we were at the high school.
Yeah.
With the permission of Nordic.
Yeah.
To use those air runners.
Coach Nordic.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was like half a dozen of us who said, okay, well, at 3:45 on December 31st, 2023, we're going to start running 4 miles every hour until we can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So 4:0, 3:45,
Yeah.
You know, the 4:0 initiative is where it all came out. So the 4:0 initiative was the initiative to say, this is Stonebreakers.
Right.
This is what we want to be about. We want to do. We want to be the stones that are broken.
Right.
That's the whole point of it.
Okay.
I'm a stone that's made to be broken, because my life is here for no other reason than to help prepare a way for the Lord to come.
Yeah.
And for His glory to be seen through my life,
right,
in whatever capacity.
So it is a ministry.
It is. It is. And it's very inclusive, because there's people who can run, and there's people who can do these initiatives, and there's people who can, you know, maybe do some of these different types of challenges that we're going to do throughout the community, who may have no ambition to even read that verse or have any, you know, desire to take on my belief system, which I hope nobody does. They need to go in and figure out what that is.
You're not going to be able to force somebody to do that anyhow, right?
Correct. No, absolutely. So it is a ministry in the fact that we are ministering to the general population by doing what we're already doing with a very direct message now.
Okay.
Which you can do that yourself, but when you get a group of people together and they all kind of beat the same heart, I've been witnessing more so my buddy Nick in town here, Brett. He's been encouraging me probably more than any, and he showed up that night when we were running on these treadmills. He was not coming to run. Yeah. He was like, I just want to come to support you guys.
What you guys
he
are
drops
doing.
Off like a gift bag and stuff and everything. It choked me up. I'm like, man, the support just from this one crazy event.
Yeah, Nick Bretz is a great guy.
He is. Yeah. He's fantastic. He's been one of my greatest encouragers in this community. Yeah. And you know, so we're linking up and trying to figure out, how do we broaden the reach? How do we expand how do we pull out the tent pegs a little bit? How do we get more people to not just come in and join the thing or be a part of the thing, but even understand what we're doing, and why does it matter?
Do you have, is it, I mean, facilitated or highlighted through social media at all, or what's the, so do you have handles and everything you want? I mean, you can say them, go ahead.
Yeah. And so that's what's been the roadmap now here is, so we've begun to put out, I have an Instagram page. Stonebreaker Collective is the Instagram page.
All one word, no punctuation or anything like that?
No, when I draw it out on paper, or when I put it on a logo, the S and the B are capital and the C is capital, but just for, you know, social media, you just keep it simple. Yeah, sure. So and you know, with an email address and stuff attached to that, Stonebreaker Collective @gmail. But really, what it is and what it could be. So actually, is it okay if I look at my phone real quick?
Absolutely.
I started kind of putting some notes together, and the vision, it's because it's not just mine, it's inclusive. You know, pieces of this would have been a moment of inspiration that a friend of mine had, and he said, hey, on your next jersey, why don't you put this down the back of it? And why don't we put this across the bottom of it? And so we've kind of just started to, and when we go race, multiple people ask about, like, where do I get one of those?
So it's going to be, sort of what I'm hearing from you is it's sort of going to be a group of people that are going to achieve extraordinary physical feats, and have that sort of be a beacon to others to, you know, follow. Maybe not necessarily not follow you, but look at you as an example of a lifestyle or a way to approach life. And so in that sense, by you doing these physical feats, what you're doing is you're kind of laying the foundation, or you're breaking the stones and create a path for others to follow in your footsteps, and also lead this sort of healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that may or may not lead them to Christ.
Yeah. Well, and just by proximity, I mean, when I interact with people, I don't have different versions, but I'm also not always on a pedestal.
Sure.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But I am me in any circle.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to, if I interact with somebody who I know isn't believing the way that, you know, I do about a particular thing or whatever, there's never going to be a line drawn at that point to say, well, then this just isn't going to work. Not to be confused with what it means to be unequally yoked,
right,
or something like that. We're not talking about that.
Sure, no.
You know, we're talking about just community focused for the broader reach for the youth, ultimately for the youngsters who don't have anything that they're interacting with, sports, games, anything like that. For, you know, so anyways, I started putting some notes together a while back, and we've just kind of adapted and whatnot. Is it okay if I read?
Yeah,
just
go right
notes?
ahead.
Okay. So Stonebreaker Collective, kind of the tagline on that is to build the body, train the mind, prepare the way.
Okay.
Isaiah 43:3-5, we already read that. What is Stonebreaker Collective? So Stonebreaker Collective is, in short, it's a hub for short form content creation. It's something
social
like
media.
This, yes. 40 second, and four is important here. So we're going to try to do.
So we're getting into the vertical scrolling world then, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking TikTok and Instagram Reels and stuff like that.
I don't do TikTok. It'll probably just be Instagram and YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. YouTube Shorts.
Yep. YouTube Shorts. So 40-second clips, 4-minute shorts, and then 40-second videos. And those would probably be more conversational like this, or maybe I do these already myself on my personal Instagram page. They might come from a moment of inspiration. It might be completely biblical. It might be something that I've just been chewing on for a little while. It might be something that happened to me or something I want to go do. And I just kind of share these things. And I'm getting positive feedback from them. So I'm going to keep doing that and then including other people in on the conversation there too.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like this. This is awesome.
So before we get too far away from what you did over at the high school.
Yeah.
How many consecutive hours did you do the 4-mile challenge?
Yeah. Well, for me, it ended up being 55.6. I didn't make it to the 56th.
So 55 hours nonstop of running 4 miles every hour.
Yep. On the air runner.
Okay, so in other words, you stayed up for 2 full nights without sleeping. I take, or did you
Just
sleep
the one night? Yeah.
Okay.
So
did you take little naps in between the running?
You're not. I mean,
No.
you could get to a point where you were exhausted.
Yeah.
But you have basically. So if you think about it like this, you're running 4 miles. If you want to endure that process over a long period of time, you're not running 7-minute miles.
That was my next question is going to be, what were you averaging?
Yeah. So we were at worst, we were hoping like just try to stay under 12.
Yeah.
Because you start getting up over into the 15s and you've got like no rest in between rounds. And so
right. So that setting the treadmill at like 5 miles an hour or something?
That's the other side. Those are air runners. So you're actually setting there's no there's no
machine
on it.
Yeah.
You're the machine.
Right.
You're the tempo. So you really had to focus so there were a couple things in that event specifically that really opened up like a lot of opportunity to see mental strength develop that I'd never considered. And it was because we were in the moment. So one was running inside in a controlled environment.
Monotonous.
You might have some music in the background or whatever, but you're not going anywhere. You're literally like most ultras you're going to see in nature type settings. You're out in some trails,
mountains of France or California. I have a buddy I went to high school with who there's some 100-mile run in California. You know what I'm talking about?
There's a couple of them. Actually.
Well, anyway, but I mean, where you're in this beautiful, scenic area there.
Most of them are like that.
Yeah.
This was not. This was. So the other piece was, but it was because we wanted to start off the new year being stones that could be broken. So we knew that there was something bigger coming, and we just wanted to kind of put ourselves in the crucible for a second.
If I do the math on that, 55, that is like 55 times 4. 50 times 4. If I can add that up as 200 miles.
No, it'd be divided. So were you asking for distance or time?
How many miles did you wind up running for the entire thing?
Yeah, the whole entire thing for me was just shy of. It would have been. See now my maths. So it was 55 point something.
Yeah.
55.6 or whatever. I didn't.
But if it were just 50 sets of 4 miles.
No. 50 miles total.
Oh, 50 miles total. Okay, I got you. Oh, that's what I thought. I guess I was like, how? Because I was thinking like, how many hours did you do it?
Yeah.
And you said 55. I was like,
like
that'd be great. Okay, all right, my bad, my misunderstanding.
It's fine.
So you
14 hours, right? Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
14 hours.
I was gonna say I don't think you.
Am I the only one who didn't get that right? Okay, thanks, Caleb. Okay.
So we thought we were going to get it wrong too because my wife, middle of the night, everybody was there to kind of cheer us on in the first few rounds, and then we're like running through the night, and so she sends me. She's worried, like I'm just worried,
Yeah. I mean, not to take away 50 miles because that's like 2 marathons, but anyway,
no. Either way, it was my buddy ran. It was like he ran into the 70s.
Yeah.
Wow. And so and sprint finish at the end, and. So that was Peyton Hill. I don't know if anybody is going to know who that is, but his dad coaches the track team here in town.
Yeah.
But so as this is happening, that was one challenge, was being in a control. It got really hot. Like
I was going to say, stuffy.
Yeah. You get dry enough just to get all the sweat off to go back on again, and it's kind of that hot cold all over again. So it got real dark internally into the early morning hours.
What'd you do for like nutrition?
We had a full table of just anything you could get. I've been kind of dialing in nutrition stuff as far as but you can only take in so many carbohydrates and sugars and water before your body just starts rejecting this isn't going to work for much longer. And so that's ultimately what took me out of the game. But we had all kinds of both liquid and substance nutrition support set up. We had a support team. We actually had a videographer there with us, and she was getting as many shots or as many clips as she wanted to. There's a video that's going to come out soon just to kind of look back on that also, now that it's been a year. But I would say that one of the greatest challenges, actually, this is so funny, how you look back and you're like, what was the toughest part of that? Your body doesn't want to move after a while. That's a given. Your guts start to kind of feel weird. You're bouncing up and down for a long period of time, even if it's a 10-minute mile or 11-minute mile, or a fast walk. Like, your body at some point is just going to say, look, like, when are we going to be done? That you can train enough to get through those hurdles. Yeah. The hardest part for me was being on this treadmill, and in front of you is a glass window, and you're seeing your reflection the entire time. All you're seeing your reflection do is just bounce up and down the entire time. And so anytime you wanted to look up, all you're watching yourself do is just, who is this sorry dude running on this treadmill in the middle of the night right now? You look dumb. Like, what are you doing right now? But you kind of get this little vertigo thing every now and then because you're looking at yourself in the reflection or whatever.
I know what
and so
you mean,
we tried to shut the shades, and that kind of backfired too. So it was just, small things.
Try to like put a iPad or something up there so you could like watch a movie while you're doing it or nothing like that. Yeah.
Well, so that was the other part, was like, we didn't want it to be more comfortable than if we were to just go out and say, ultimately our goal was to run 100 miles. And so if we were to do that outside, well, you can't have any of that stuff outside.
No.
So we wanted to mimic as best we could being in an environment that's not controllable.
Yeah.
Even though we were in a controlled environment.
So no creature comforts or anything like that.
More headphones, nothing. I mean, it was just stow and go. Oh, the clock's coming. We had a clock every time that would beep at us.
I almost wonder, like, did the rest actually hurt you more than the miles that you're putting on? Because, like, having done that once already now, would you find it to be easier to just go out and run 50 miles straight without stopping, or doing what you did?
Yeah, I've thought about that multiple times, and I think my answer to that question right now is I'd rather not stop.
Yeah,
I'd rather just keep going.
Because you're all warmed up, and then it's like your body then could think, okay, maybe now I'm going to get
Yep.
the rest that I normally get,
Yep.
but then then we're right back at it,
Yeah.
you know?
And I'd rather run those 50 plus miles on a track that's not the same every 4.
You'd rather, yeah,
You know,
I would think,
And that's
sure.
the other side of it, because I've done another Last Runner Standing this last summer, and that was at Mount Ski-Goal, and it was every 45 minutes you're going to run about 3 miles, give or take.
Yeah.
There's a lot of elevation, but you're running the same loop every time.
Mm-hmm.
And
But at least it's a loop.
it's a loop.
Yeah.
It's a loop. So you're going to go up, you're going to come down. The first few reps through, you're like, man, I could do this all day. And then by the 7th, 8th, 9th, you're like, I really want to be done now. But when you're just out running, like, here's a starting point, there's the finish line, I just have to get there.
Well, yeah, like run out to Walker and back
There's
from Park Rapids.
Yeah, or run to Walker and further and just like find a circle. I don't know. I hate out and backs.
Yeah.
I despise them. I don't know why. Like, I need to see new territory.
I know.
or something.
I prefer loops
Yeah,
too, but
yeah.
sometimes it's unavoidable.
It's sometimes unavoidable. I've been on the trail plenty of times doing them. So, but I would say, and there is a goal, and I'll just say it. By the time I'm, this would be year 2026. The goal is to complete a 100-mile ultra. So all of the endurance building and pacing and everything that's been culminating, over these years would build into that, hopefully.
Now you've got experience with CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting as well, and now it seems like you're focusing more on running. Obviously we don't have time to go into all the different nuances of those other two, but what has kind of caused you to shift away from more, I guess, weight training and things like that into this area of extreme endurance?
Yeah. So the shift hasn't been complete. I do both.
Okay.
And what I'll say, so CrossFit, I had been doing CrossFit and coaching CrossFit for 10, coaching for 5. And those would have been in areas like California and Idaho. The last gym that I coached at was a very healthy gym, strong leadership, strong community. So it was a great experience to go out on.
Yeah.
Overall.
Sure.
The CrossFit mentality, the things that it helped me understand, the holistic approach to functional fitness, the different ways to get the same objective complete by a variety of people in all ages, shapes, and sizes. Awesome. The adaptations I chose to make over time for me came with Olympic lifting was really fun, but I also knew that if I keep pressing myself to go further and further and further, and what I mean when I say that is heavier and heavier and heavier, is there's going to be a breaking
injury,
point.
right?
And I as a husband, as a father, as one who wants to run with my kids and play and whatever, I just knew like there's a shelf life on this.
Yeah.
And what could other things possibly look like? And I didn't go searching for running. In fact, it kind of found me, kind of the April 3rd story for me. It came and found me again, and it was dragging me, to the starting line. But it took a buddy of mine crossing a finish line for the Fargo Half Marathon a few years back. And when I was in that environment and I'm watching these people just cheer for these people running, and like I've done CrossFit competitions, I've been in other sports or whatever, and it's like that cheering is like,
yeah.
And there's like, one person would cross the line, wow, and then another person would cross the line, wow.
Everybody's happy.
It was a really supportive community. I didn't expect that. And then when I was watching my buddy train for that race, it's just something clicked. I'm like, I wonder if I could run like longer distances. Up to that point, a 5-mile jaunt was a long run for me. So I knew that I had some work to do if I really wanted to stretch it out. I didn't know anything about run training, nutrition for that type of stuff. I knew about, what I was doing before. And so I said, I'm just going to sign up for a race. The only way I'm going to train.
That's the best way to do it.
I'm going to sign up for a race.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how you have to do it. And I've heard that said about goals in general.
Yeah.
Is you just basically, you sign up for the race and then you go around telling all your friends you signed up for the race.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because then if you don't do it, then you've then all your friends will think less of you. I mean, not really, maybe, but at least
they'll hold you accountable.
You're more invested in it when you go around saying, "I'm going to do this," right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So then, and many many now kind of know who this person is. When I first came across him, he was still kind of up and coming. But I came across a documentary on YouTube by Nick Bear, and he was running, and this he's a big guy.
Yeah.
And he was running the Leadville 100, the ultra out in Colorado.
Yeah.
And that documentary, it was incredibly well done. It was just really well done. Just how they did the documenting the process, but just it's a good project. Like the videographers, the sound, everybody just knew really like what they were supposed to do, and they got the job done. And so it was easy to watch. And I'm watching this process. I'm watching this, like, you know, guy who basically weighs my weight, I'm sure, close to, move through the mountains over the course of 100 miles and get it done. And then come to find he's got like marathon record stuff that he's doing, or he's trying to break PRs on marathon. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, big guys can run?
Yeah.
It kind of gave me like, wait, big, you know, and
it's
so
possible,
like,
yeah.
So I kind of hopped into this hybrid mentality where it's like, I'm going to do my 3 core lifts, which starting strength is really big on, and we can transition there. But you know, I still want to lift a heavy bar. I don't necessarily want to do it with explosive power as much.
So you're doing squat, bench, and clean, or
deadlift?
Deadlift.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep. The power would be the clean and the snatch or something like that. And so very infrequently. I really don't do any more snatching at all, but just for mobility issues. But yeah, so every now and then it's good to move explosive weight. But I wanted to take that and transition into like, how can this now benefit what I want to do in my endurance endeavors? Yeah. And
how does it?
It's been a pretty cool process. I'm experimenting on myself. Yeah. So you can listen to a lot of other people talk about it, and you can watch the YouTube videos, but until you really start putting yourself in those environments and saying, okay, I'm going to commit myself to, so I'll just say it. I did the BPN has an app, and I downloaded the app, and there's a hybrid training program on that app. And that was my first go at like, how does this work together? Yeah. And so, you know, Monday you're doing an endurance focus, whether that's a run, most of it's running. So the endurance is going to be the run, and then Tuesday you're going to do a press and a core workout, mostly strength, no conditioning involved in that. And then the next day, you know, you're going to do some speed work, running. And then the next day, you're going to get on the heavy bar and do some back squat. Yeah. And then, you know, and they kind of flip-flop back and forth. And I went through that cycle twice, and I noticed, like, it was noticeable, the improvement from, you can go too far with a heavy bar. Yeah. And decrease your ability to perform at the peak levels that you want to on the endurance side.
Okay, so there's like a sweet spot there somewhere.
I think so, but I think it really comes with knowing your body.
And everybody's different too, right? Yeah.
So you're not going to max out your back squat and then tomorrow go try to hit the track and do, you know, 400 meter repeats for fun. Yeah. That would not be
Those would
wise.
Never be fun regardless of whether you did.
Right. Either way, So, but you know, if you want to go the long route, and that's what I want to extend this process, this evolutionary process, for as long as I can. I know plenty of people into their 60s, 70s, and 80s who are still getting out, still hitting the trails.
I mean, that's the point, isn't it? Isn't it kind of to increase the not just longevity, but the quality of life?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I met a guy named Fast Eddie. Eddie
met him before,
he's an awesome guy. But I mean, he's still pushing the like ultra courses, you know. He told me about training one time for an ultra, and I mean, we're sitting in the Emmaville Cafe over some coffee and some not so healthy breakfast. Yeah. And he's talking about how he was training for a 100-mile race he had coming up, and you know, he set up his picnic table up at the high school track, and he started running at 6 p.m. and just ran through the night, you know, around the high school track, just getting ready to run in the night. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. And he was like in his 70s by the time he was doing that.
Yeah, you know? And 100-mile races.
Pretty impressive.
That is not a joke,
No. Yeah, so I've been inspired along the way by a lot of these other people that are just involved in my life. Justin Domagal. And I'll name drop unapologetically.
Yeah, no, go right ahead.
If you got to scratch it out. But, you know, Justin was really big into endurance running as well. We did a trail race together, and he kind of opened up that box of, here's something new to explore for me. And triathlon, same thing. Justin and Nick both triathlon. And so I've kind of just dibble-dabbled in a lot of these different areas. And I'll say that long distance running and weight training are kind of my sweet spot. Triathlon's uncomfortable for me a little bit. So
because of the swimming, or
mostly because of the swimming, yeah. And just long periods of time on a bike, and I just, you're in a state of discomfort for a longer period of time.
Yeah. Actually, I asked Katie Freitag about that, and I thought because I asked her, it's like, well, it seems like riding a bike would be like a break, from like the tough stuff, and she's like, well, you'd be surprised. That's a long bike ride, and she goes that at the end of the bike ride, she's happy to do a marathon just to get off of the bike.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've never pushed that distance. This year, actually, coming up here in September is going to be my first. I'm going to do a 70.3, so that's a half Ironman distance.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to do that down in Square Lake.
Oh.
So that's
Square Lake in Minnesota? Oh, it's like Stillwater area, right?
Stillwater,
that's where I went to high school there.
Oh,
so,
cool. Yeah. So they do a phenomenal. I went out there last year to support my buddy, and I guess the body of water there in Square Lake's like the most clear body of water in all of Minnesota.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to race it next year instead of just support. So so that'll be my first. So that's 56 miles on a bike, and then you got to run a half marathon after that, and your legs feel like jello, and you look like a giraffe trying to walk after just being born, and it's a mess. It's a soup sandwich, as some would say.
Yeah.
But I like the training components that go into triathlon.
Sure.
I like how you cannot just singularly focus. Like, you have to stay disciplined in this variety that you've now entered into. And if you let one slip, you can maybe let one off a little bit, but you can't let two off.
No.
Or else you're just out there just having fun, and that's fine for anybody who wants to do that stuff for having fun. That's fine.
But you're trying to be a little more competitive.
I still want to breathe fire a little bit.
Yeah, sure, fair enough. Yeah. So, well, those are all. It's really good to hear about what you're doing in terms of your organization and in terms of your personal goals and how those two things relate to each other, and that's great. And I think both, it requires a lot of mental toughness and willpower in order to kind of get through these training sessions. And we've just got, today's January 3rd and everything, and a lot of times people will make like New Year's resolutions and things like that, to say, I'm going to do this year. If it's just, I'm going to run 1 mile or, but I'm sure that probably throughout the course of your training experience that there have been points in time where you've probably thought to yourself, like, why am I doing this? Like even just like you're telling about how you're on the treadmill and seeing yourself in the reflection and just asking yourself, like, why? But at some point you kind of break past that doubt or that attitude or that thought that you could potentially just sort of throw up the white flag and everything like that. So, like, how would you go about, if you were going to tell somebody who was going to try to do something, resolve to do something tough, to go about doing that without quitting?
That's an incredibly good question, because more often than not, I'll say, so we are holistic creatures that have a body, but we also experience things beneath the surface. That could be mental, could be emotional, could be spiritual. So our physical component is only going to take us so far, physically. There are some things that, when we parent our children, we don't practice, you can be whatever you want to be and do whatever you want to do. Because if they don't train or adapt or grow through whatever it is that they want to do, they're not going to be able to do whatever they want to do, So I'll say that the discipline it takes to do something hard, my experience has been, it's always more mental than it is physical.
Right.
And so when you reach your mental barrier, and we're all going to experience those. Right now, if I train, so I'm going to be running Grandma's Marathon in June. Most of that run training, and I'm looking for a decent PR, is that run training is going to have to be in the morning before I go to work.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get to just say, hey guys, I'm training for a marathon.
No, plus it's in June, so that means you got to train in the winter months.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of treadmill, and then the minute that road thaws, the long runs outside on Saturdays. So when it comes to the mental capacity that it takes, I think that's where the honest question comes in first. Is what have I done that's challenging. I think sometimes when we set out to do something new, we have a tendency to forget everything that we have done up to that point.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, just throw everything out the window. That doesn't matter anymore because I'm on this new objective. But if you remember some of the things that you have done that are hard, and really write them down or do something with them so you can visualize, you can see yourself going through these hard things, whether you chose them or not. When you do get the chance to choose one, and you're saying, I'm going to enter into this crucible that nobody's putting a gun to my head and saying I have to do. I'm choosing to enter the race. I'm choosing to enter into this state of adversity. Define it, whatever it is. Your hard might be different than my hard, but it's going to be hard. When I hit these walls, I've yet to come into a relationship with an accountability partner that keeps me honest to that. You still have to keep yourself honest. And so there's a matter of understanding what you're capable of physically and then putting yourself to the test. And that is where mental fortitude is built. And so when you get to a place where, for me, if it's the early morning run and if I got to get up at 4:30 or 5 in order to hit the distance that's on the schedule for that day, I can't chop that down or else it's not going to bid well. Right. I can't keep just, I don't have time to hit the 7 miles. I'll do 5. Well, fine. You got a 5 mile run in, but where are you going to make up those other 2? Because they still got to get ran.
It lost forever, the opportunity.
That's it. So it takes reps. Mental fortitude is built over time. You're not just going to wake up one day and breathe fire or accomplish whatever goal it is that you set out to accomplish. I have goals for the year of 2025. I will not be able to check the box until January 1st, 2026. Did that happen this year? Did I get that done this year?
So no instant gratification.
No instant gratification. There are a few on there which that box is going to get checked in June or in August or in September, but nothing soon. So I got to hit the ground running now. And when I prepare for anything physically, I first go through the mental, verbal dialogue with myself. What are you actually capable of? Do you have the margin in your life right now to train the way that you're going to want to in order to compete at the level that you want to compete at? It's hard for me to just do something like that for fun. I know that it can be done. It's a challenge for me at this point in my life. At a point down the road, maybe that will be less challenging. So when I enter into it, I want to do as best as I possibly can. I don't need to stand on the top podium with the gold around my neck, but I want to make sure that I did the best I possibly could. And the only way I'm going to do that in a race is if I understand that there's usually in marathon training anywhere from a 12 to 16 week period of time for triathlon, maybe longer, where you've consistently put in rep after rep after rep after rep after rep. And if I was honest to that program and that schedule, whatever it is, take training out and put in diet, or take diet out and put in, I want to read however many books a month or whatever it is. If you maintain consistency in the small things, 1% better every day, it will matter at the finish line. And so I've been saying it like this.
So it's the goal. The goal is itself a motivation to not quit, kind of thing. Or
I would say it like this. Like, over the course of my life, every perspective that I have right now has been formed by my experiences. So my experience is only going to allow me to chart new courses. Okay. You don't just get to throw darts at a blank map and say, that's just going to happen because I'm willing it to happen. I can only think about what I want to do next based on what I've already done. I can't pull your inspiration, or I can't pull from somebody else's book.
I mean that's the nature of time, right?
Yeah. So if I give myself the opportunity to experience more and experience more challenging things and not quit, by the time you cross those finish lines, which I've done multiple times now, which after I ran my first marathon, I said, I'm never running that distance ever again. We can check the box on that right now. I'm done. Somebody come chew my legs off. I was crying. I'm just like, what am I doing out here? I had no nutrition. I didn't know what I was doing. I was out there running in 0 drop shoes. And I thought I could get past mile 22 on grit. No, you cannot.
It's hard.
And I got to the end of that. I'm like, never again. Never again. So what happened was, we get to the farmer's market a couple weeks later, and we bump into a friend, and she's like, oh, I heard you just ran the Fargo Marathon. It's like, well, if you want to call it run. Yeah, I completed it. And she said, have you ever run the Bemidji one? It's like, no, I didn't even know they had one. Well, you should check it out. It's a flat course, end of the season, you know. Maybe just run the half this year and something like that. So I go home that day, and I'm looking at this thing on the computer. I'm like, the Bemidji Full Marathon. Late season. It's going to be cooler.
Yeah,
a lot of time to train.
The weather's pretty unpredictable in October there too. I mean, I've done that one. I did the Lake Loop a couple of times, and it was completely different weather both times I did it. Yeah.
So I went from like the Fargo Dome, when they still started and stopped the race in the Fargo Dome. I went there from that experience to literally crying, telling my wife she has to come find me because I'm not going to where the rest of the people are. I don't even know what's happening. I'm having this emotional experience I did not expect. And all this training, and now I feel like I'm failing. And I go from that experience to a couple of weeks later signing up for the next one at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And
you just got to sign up.
And doing the same training regimen again and going after it again.
Yeah.
Phenomenally different experience. So if you quit after the first one, if it's hard, and you say one and done, you can do that. But what if you're not really supposed to? You know, what if there's an opportunity for you to be able to see, yeah, that was terribly challenging and I did not prepare well for it. But you have experience from that though. And those experiences are going to gain you a different perspective when you go enter it again. We've 4 children, like my wife. You know, how many times do women go through the same process over and over again? You're just like,
every time it's amazing. Yeah,
it's amazing every time and different every time. Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, Kenny, from one cool California guy to another, thank you for coming on today. Appreciate all your insight. And
Absolutely.
Stonebreaker Collective, I think you mentioned the handle on Instagram and everything, and so we're looking for big things from you guys this year.
Yeah, Instagram, YouTube, there's going to be a few different connecting points, but I appreciate the opportunity to come on here, get the word out a little bit, but just talk, connect, you know, it's awesome.
All right.
Appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Kenny May.
Awesome, man.
All right. Yeah.